Wisconsin, home to many wild and untamed places. Home to animals ordinary and extraordinary.
These are not baby owls, these are full grown.
Wisconsin is teeming with wildlife. So with an eye on the sky and foot to path, we go in search of creatures that have inspired Native Americans, fostered legends in these painted forests, and attracted worldwide attention.
There is something a little magical about them.
Get ready to explore wild Wisconsin.
Major funding for In Wisconsin is provided by the people of Alliant Energy, who bring safe, reliable, and environmentally friendly energy to keep homes, neighborhoods, and life in Wisconsin running smoothly. Alliant Energy, we're on for you. And the animal dentistry and oral surgery specialists of Milwaukee and Oshkosh, a veterinary team working with pet owners and family veterinarians throughout Wisconsin, providing care for oral disease and dental problems of small companion animals, with additional funding provided by Bike Wisconsin.
Welcome to Wild Wisconsin. I'm Patty Lowe. There's a growing mystery surrounding an animal my tribe, the Ojibwe, called Wabashashi, a small but very fierce predator and the clan symbol for the warriors in my tribe. In Wisconsin's Joe Garrett shows you why the elusive pine marten is endangered and what's being done to save it in the North Woods of Ashland County.
This is a story we've been following for many years.
Did they climb a tree? Did they jump off a tree?
A mystery.
They'll go in and out of the log.
In the endangered species genre. A mystery to be solved by detective work.
That animal we caught yesterday, caught her over here. Now she's off over this way.
Through tracking and elegant traps.
Put that grass in there, then it's got something for them to stay warm.
And teamwork.
Then this camera over here is the infrared, and that only works at night.
The mystery centers on this animal, the pine marten, a tiny and tough predator. Weighing in at 1 to 4 pounds, this member of the weasel family was always part of Wisconsin's North Woods. The animal was driven from the state by fur trapping around the turn of the century. A recovery effort began in the early 1990s.
Now we got her.
But here's the mystery.
Cool.
Unlike other animals that have been reintroduced in the state, pine martens have not thrived. In fact, over the last decade, their numbers have declined. Current numbers? Researchers estimate that there are fewer than 200 in the Nicolet National Forest and only 30 to 100 in the Schwamigan. Here's the question. What's the story with Wisconsin's martens?
Minnesota's got several thousand martens, and Michigan's got several hundred, so there's not quite the same densities, but both are apparently doing well and thriving. And yet we're stuck in the middle here with, an endangered species. I think she's probably this way.
Jonathan Gilbert is a wildlife biologist for GLFLIC, the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission, and he's studied martens for decades.
There's all kinds of fresh tracks all through here. So she's been in here, if this is where she is hunting and stuff.
Armed with new, more precise information about exact specifics in habitat that martens prefer.
She's telling me she likes this spot a lot. This is an important thing. So now I've learned something from her. I've learned that these stumps are important and those are useful places for them.
Gilbert and GLFLIC and fellow researchers from the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the National Forest Service joined forces to start a new 3-year recovery effort. Their goal? 30 martens, like Tweak here, brought in from Minnesota every year for 3 years, for a total of 90 new martens in the state. So how's it going 1 year in? Gilbert gave us an update on the first year's twists and turns.
I mean, there isn't a manual out there that says, here's how you introduce martens into Wisconsin.
One very nice thing that happened in study year 1 involves this study subject. Meet Cherie.
So we put some of these trail cameras that everybody's familiar with now. We put it out on a maternal den site. That is where a female we thought had young.
In a first for Wisconsin researchers, they caught this. Cherie emerges from the entry to her den at the base of a cedar tree. Look what she has.
And we actually got pictures of the mother carrying the young out of the den site. So it was very cool, and so we were able to actually document that reproduction was occurring.
In addition, they found another pocket of pine martens. The area used for the recovery project stretches for some 20 miles in the Schwamigan. That's larger than the researchers' previous study area, and happily, it holds martens.
We found some martens down there that were native animals that were living there, that had been there all along, and we didn't know about them. They occur over a wider area, and there's probably more of them than we thought in the past. So that's all good news.
Understand, these woods are still way short on martens. A sustainable population is around 1,000 animals. They need 700 to 800 more. The work of these researchers trapping Minnesota martens is critical.
We wanted 20 females and 10 males. And so when we talk about bringing animals from one place and putting them in another, there's two ways you can release them, a hard release and a soft release. A hard release is just like it sounds. You go catch them someplace else, you bring them over here, you open up the door to the container and you let them go.
But the researchers wanted to keep the martens to these special, pre-selected areas, chock full of the kind of habitat the researchers knew martens need to thrive.
And so if they take off and run away, well, they may be running from good habitat to very poor habitat, and we don't want that to happen.
So, soft release. Hold them for a few days, get accustomed to the woods, and then just prop the door open. Let the martens sneak out and settle in. Well, the martens had their own idea.
But once we opened the door and let them go, well, they tended to wander anyhow. I think maybe the furthest one was 20 miles that he moved. And so that kind of was not really meeting our objective of trying to hold them in the place.
In addition, a few martens chipped their teeth, trying to chew their way out of the holding pens.
Okay, so it's not the whole tooth that's gone, it's just the tip of the tooth would be broken off.
Still unacceptable.
For a predator, that's not a good thing. That's what they use, that's how they make their living.
Their goal is to try to learn as much as they can about the species, but still protect the individual animal. It's a constant trade-off.
Each animal has its own frequency on the collar.
For example, without radio collars, it isn't possible to track the animals. Without tracking, there's no information on how the animals, like Frank here, are doing. But collaring has a downside.
It's more weight for them to carry when they're hunting or escaping predators. So animals that have to squeeze into tight places to hunt, like martens do to get mice, sometimes that's a negative.
To mitigate that negative, a trade-off. Before they started the project, they agreed to collar only half the martens they brought in. But the marten must top 600 grams. One more refinement in this 3-year project.
It's a great opportunity to work with such a cool species. I'm already thinking about the next steps.
Nice and warm in there, huh? Yeah, you want to come out?
They also discovered with a hard release, where they immediately set the martens free, the critters tend to stay closer to the research area and aren't as likely to run off. We move from Wisconsin's northern boundaries to its western border. That's where another comeback is taking flight. Maiden Rock, a bluff overlooking Lake Pepin on the Mississippi River, is the historic nesting grounds for peregrine falcons. Bob Anderson is the director of the Iowa-based Raptor Resource Project.
Hopefully we're going to find 3 or 4 babies. I'll be happy if we find 2 babies or even 1.
For decades, Anderson has been working to bring peregrine falcons back to their natural nesting sites. In eastern Wisconsin, there's another effort to propel the peregrine falcon comeback. In Wisconsin reporter Liz Kerner introduces you to a man pioneering this falcon recovery project near Pleasant Prairie.
You've heard the expression, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it. Well, the somebody is Greg Septon.
What's that? It's a peregrine feather from the left shoulder.
And this dirty job, cleaning out a nest box, is one of the many things he does to bring peregrine falcons back to Wisconsin.
And by keeping that clean, you keep bacteria down, you keep a crust from forming on top, you keep extra humidity from being harbored by that crust. And in the end, I think it improves the hatch rate tremendously.
By the mid-60s, peregrines had been killed off in Wisconsin by the insecticide DDT. They were one of the first species placed on the federal endangered species list.
This year we'll have between 25 and 30 nesting pairs. Last year and the year before, we had 27 pairs. nesting both those years. And interesting enough, both in 07 and 08, we had a known total of 81 young produced by the same number of pairs.
Their amazing comeback here is due in no small part to Septon's efforts in eastern Wisconsin. In the late 80s, along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Wisconsin DNR, Septon began releasing peregrines that were raised in captivity. What made them stay was a string of nest boxes mounted on tall buildings along the Lake Michigan shore.
Peregrine. We got a peregrine. I know. She's here. Yeah. Here, I'll get down. She'll come in if I get out of here.
We started a concerted effort to get nest boxes put up along all the tall man-made structures along the western shore of Lake Michigan, which is a major migration route, and peregrines love following shorelines. So it was like, duh, all the ingredients are here. Let's just pursue it. And today they're all occupied.
The nest boxes were placed on tall buildings like banks and grain elevators and the chimneys of power plants like this one at We Energy's Pleasant Prairie facility south of Kenosha. Septon says the owners of these buildings play an important role in peregrine recovery efforts.
They give us access to get up on the buildings, to identify the birds, to band the birds, to clean boxes, and so on and so forth. But without that buy-in, without that corporate buy-in on a large scale, it just would not have happened.
We Energies has taken it a step further by placing web cameras in the nest boxes at all of its plants.
We have webcams situated on each of our 6 nesting boxes that we have installed. I think the biggest benefit we gain from that really helps Greg out in being able to identify the individual adults that are using the nest sites and pairing up as a nesting pair.
Since the beginning of the project, 60% of the chicks born in Wisconsin have hatched at the Lake Michigan sites. But because the birds' recovery has been so successful, their search for territory and a suitable mate now sends them further afield.
There's enough birds being produced each year that these young need to start dispersing and looking for places to go, and consequently, they're doing that.
Septon has gotten nest boxes put up at a number of other sites in view of water, including one at Alliant Energy's Columbia Generating Station along the Wisconsin River near Partyville.
Okay, we've got 3 babies.
He inspects the sites every spring to find out which birds have moved in and to document their success rate. On this visit, he found an astonishing 8 eggs had been laid. He later learned only 3 chicks survived. Even if they survive the competition in the nest, they're not home free.
50 to 70% of these birds are gone the first year. And it's sad, it's tough to see, but it's nature's way of ensuring that the best genes are passed on and that the birds that survive are tough and they'll continue.
I don't know. I think that is a female, isn't it?
But enough birds have survived to send them to another spot near water, the MG&E plant in Madison. Manager Steve Schultz put up this nest box designed by Septon 10 years ago.
Greg told us we weren't really on the beaten path for peregrines, so it might take a little while, but we never thought it would take almost 10 years to get a nesting pair of peregrines.
Hold up above us.
As he does at all the sites, Septon risks the wrath of the parents by temporarily stealing the chicks from their nest. He takes them indoors to band them and collect information that helps scientists manage recovery efforts. His volunteer assistant is Schultz's son, Cole, who helped build their nest box.
When we band these birds, it allows us to determine just how far they disperse. We had a male that nested at the Edgewater plant in Sheboygan. His name was Sterling. He was produced at 48 Wall Street on Manhattan Island.
Septon's a sure hand at banding these frightened chicks. Over the years, he's clamped ID bands on more than 500 peregrines, a clear indication of his passion for this special bird.
Take your time, take all the photos you want. This is the only time you're going to get a family portrait of these guys. So, I've always loved peregrines since I was a kid, and I spent over a quarter century working at the Milwaukee Public Museum. That's where I initiated the project and formed a nonprofit from that point to raise additional money, and I've just always really loved peregrines.
Septon now works as a private consultant, traveling the state doing what he can to help this bird he loves.
As long as I'm physically able and capable, I'm going to continue doing it. I love what I'm doing.
Peregrine falcons were delisted from the federal endangered species list in 1999. Wisconsin DNR officials say peregrine falcon numbers are now at a healthy level, and they've started discussions to take them off the state endangered and threatened species list. Whether it's raptors, martins, or wolves, Capturing the amazing wildlife footage you've seen on In Wisconsin isn't easy. In fact, the task of videotaping the elusive timber wolf is next to impossible. Reporter Joe Garrett shows you how videographer Frank Bull's tenacity paid off with this award-winning report 4 years in the making at the Necedah National Wildlife Refuge in Juneau County.
Just so you understand, Bull is no novice to nature photography. He's been looking through a lens at animals for decades, from moose in Alaska to lions in Africa. He's followed crane hunters in Pakistan and shimmied into a rainforest canopy to capture an avian wonderland in Costa Rica. But nothing, not bull snakes, not bears, not bats, nothing has been as hard to capture as wolves. Adrian Weideven, a wolf specialist for Wisconsin's Department of Natural Resources.
They're such shy, secretive animals. They travel mostly at night. Your chance of seeing them would be remote.
This is the understatement of the century. The project began with much promise, with Bull testing his camera equipment in his backyard.
Then you just got to do a lot of tests. I got 2 outside cats, and they live in a lawn shed, so I set it up at their entrance. I'd watch what they were doing, and I'd see what the camera was doing at different temperatures.
First kitty cats, then wild critters. Easy, right? No.
That was all eagles when we first started. Eagles came in during the day and used up all the tape.
Time for Plan B.
So that's when we changed to night only, because the eagles aren't active and the wolves are mostly nocturnal.
The nightlife. And so began an accumulation of animal footage from this wolf project that we came to call Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Lots of animals, but no wolves. Bull would eventually employ a total of 3 of his own remote cameras around the state, day and night, and baited, checked, and monitored by 3 incredible animal fans. Ron Parisian, a wildlife technician for the Great Lakes Indian Fish and Wildlife Commission. Richard King, wildlife biologist at the Necedah National Wildlife Refuge. And Ron Schultz, who works as a wildlife technician for the DNR. This combo of cameras captured just a few wonderful but short wolf moments and some amazing shots of other animals. Here's a black bear family. 2 turkey vultures strut, wings outstretched. 3 turkeys, all toms, saunter. Here's a bobcat burying some food morsels. This is a gray fox, completely nocturnal, seldom seen. It looks more feline than canine. This canine, a coyote, had a tough time of it. Bull and others tried a variety of ways to entice in wolves, from dead deer, scented lures, a rotting beaver, and in this case, a buried turkey carcass, buried and to the coyote's dismay, chained down. But the animals gave as good as they got. This is what a black bear, weighing in at around 200 pounds, can do to a camera. It's not pretty. And it wasn't just the big guys. This flying squirrel, weighing in between 4 to 7 ounces, developed an interest in plastic cords, and with one bite, shut down production. Bull used his remote camera system very successfully on other stories that evolved out of his wolf quest, like this report we produced on the pine marten. But though he tried the remote cameras on different sites, in a blind, on the ground, in the air, the wolves seldom showed and never stayed for long. Their senses were too sharp. This one hears the camera, even though it's muffled by casing. This one looks up and sees not the infrared light, that's invisible, but the slight glow of the light fixture itself. And he's gone. till one snowy Saturday this January. After 4 years of effort, a visitor. For 4 minutes, the wolf trotted across a frozen lake and then away from the camera. Amazingly, this visual cornucopia continued the next day.
I was sitting in the blind looking out that north window, and I look back to the west over here, and I see 2 wolves coming across the frozen lake. And they actually started to come towards me. They came within 200 yards, I would suspect, and the lead wolf stopped and looked at the blind. All of a sudden, he took off, running straight to the north. And he looked over his shoulder as he's running. That's always a giveaway that they've seen you and they're not going to get any closer.
Once again, the wolves' keen senses prevailed, and their intelligence.
Sometimes I think they even notice that the blind is there because I'm sitting on top of a hill, not a lot of cover around. And I think they know the country so well, their territory, that I believe they know when there's something different there. It would be sort of akin to coming home and finding another sofa in your living room.
4 years, and finally, a total of more than 14 minutes of footage. The wolves turned tail, and the wolf quest came to a close.
Our state is home to an amazing array of animals, but some are almost impossible to see. So we wanted to give you a close-up look at one that easily hides in the wild. In Wisconsin, reporter Joe Garrett shows you this elusive raptor at a place called Woodland Dunes Nature Center in Manitowoc County.
There's an animal that is so secretive, so hidden. You're lucky if you hear its call in these woods. To say nothing of actually seeing them. These mysterious creatures only emerge at night, which is why Jim Dufek arrives in the waning hours here at the Woodland Dunes Nature Center in Manitowoc County. Dufek volunteers here as a member of a group called the Night Gang.
The Night Gang is a group of volunteers who come out to check the nets at different times during the night. Right now we have 10 p.m., midnight, and I continue 2 a.m. Work down the net. People come out.
They show up at these time slots nearly every night for nearly 6 weeks. Every night, these nets go up.
We've actually had as many as 70 in a night when you get a northwest winds.
You don't want to stick your finger in there. Oh, man. Oh, there is something in here. Now remember, these are full grown.
Bernie Bruchot reveals the animal the Night Gang netted, squinting in the sunlight.
These are not baby owls. These are full grown.
They look docile, but they're really not.
This is a saw-whet owl, and saw-whets are the stars of the Woodland Dunes annual Owl Fest. The name again is saw-whet, and it's Wisconsin's smallest owl.
Saw-whets, maybe 8 inches. Wingspread, maybe 14, 16 inches. They're light, very light, just a couple ounces.
Owlfest provides a chance to see this petite predator up close and to gain an appreciation of how it survives in the world of night.
Where is yours? You can tell me. Where do you see them? You don't see them. You see that disc of feathers, the little disc-shaped feathers here? They direct the sound to behind that disc, and back there is where that ear is. And if you look, there it is.
Oh my gosh.
Behind the eyeball.
Oh my gosh.
That's weird.
Oh my goodness.
That's weird. These disc-shaped feathers here direct the sound to the back of that disc, to where the ears are. And one is higher, one is lower, which helps so that they're able to hear even better.
This bird is a hook, a way in through an interesting animal to an interest in the natural world. Jim Nickelbein, the executive director of Woodland Dunes.
I hear references to gateway species along the Wisconsin River, or you may have bald eagles congregating. So for us, it's saw-whet owls. They're very appealing to people. They're a calm bird. They're amenable to being shown and then released. Being able to get people in close proximity like that forms a connection. So for us, they're our gateway.
Bernie Bruchot has been absolutely critical to making that connection. He's not a researcher. For most of his life, he worked in local grocery stores.
Usually we'll catch between 200 and 400 saw-whet owls each fall.
But for all of his life, Bruchot has been passionately in love with birds, bird watching and banding. Every year, the saw-whets migrate through the woods and wetlands of woodland dunes as they migrate south along Lake Michigan.
We use the glove because it lays on its back with its talons up waiting for me. He's snapping his beak. He wants to scare us.
Those that are caught are banded.
I always band on the right leg, and I guess it doesn't make a difference, but I always band on the right leg.
And information about these little birds is recorded. Secrets spill out of their wings.
Now you see there's two different colors. These are lighter than these. So that means that this is an adult. It was not hatched this year.
Well, we want to find out where they go, how long it takes them to get there. Do they come back to the same spot?
How many have bird books? All right. You look in there and it tells you where the bird nests and where it goes in wintertime, and that's all through the banding program.
There was no Woodland Dunes Nature Center when Bruchot started banding here. In fact, it was the success of his banding efforts that put this place on the map as a migratory hotspot. Because of that, Bruchot pushed to get this place preserved. 1,200 acres, and 30 years later, it is. This is a bird haven, but it's the saw-whets that steal the show. Darren Lohr.
And I've been fascinated by owls, and I learned of this event going on and thought, wow, I got to go down there and be a part of that.
And you decide who's going to adopt this owl because we need someone to release it. Otherwise, that's got to go back. There, we got one. Okay.
Bruchot has spearheaded a program to adopt an owl at Owlfest. The money raised will help the center buy new nets.
Put the owl right on the ground. Let him go. Okay. He cheated. He went in the mulberry tree instead of the lilacs. But you should be. We can all come and see if we can see him now. We should be able to walk right up to him if we find them.
There's something that makes me feel good to know that I've perhaps helped, and just knowing that I kind of did something that is out there in the wild.
To be out there, in the wild. Bruchot now serves as the center's environmental education director. He'd love to pass on his love of birds.
We want to teach kids the love of the outdoors. That is diminishing, and that's a disaster.
It's called a saw-whet owl.
It's a piece of wilderness. These kids have never seen this all like this before. They don't even know these things exist.
Spread your fingers like that, and these are his legs. I'm gonna take his legs and put them on your hand like that, on that finger, and then you close your hand.
It's a touch of wildness
Close your hand.
that hopefully will help a love of nature take wing.
Open your hand and he'll be fine.
She's going to take a picture of you. Put your hand on the grass, and then put your hand away.
There she goes.
The forested ridge and swale habitat at the heart of Woodland Dunes is designated a site of global ecological significance by the Wisconsin DNR. There are only a few similar habitats in the entire world. Like the Woodland Dunes, preserving Wisconsin critters is an important mission of the Northwoods Wildlife Center. In Wisconsin, reporter Art Hackett shows you how the center transformed into a tourist attraction while still serving injured and orphaned animals in Minocqua.
You guys seen a snowy owl before?
Every half hour, a guide walks visitors through displays of animals, which are residents at the Northwoods Wildlife Center.
The permanent resident birds are those that have been injured badly enough that they'll not be able to be released into the wild. They get to stay here and be part of our education program. Phoenix here is imprinted on humans, which means that she is too familiar with people. She never developed her wing muscles fully, so she can't fly strongly and she can't pick up food and fly off with it.
Beth Burns is the center's executive director.
My father started working here in 1988, so after school I'd come and sit with some of the animals while he was finishing up work. In 1989 I started giving tours.
But educating and hopefully entertaining visitors is only part of the center's mission. The center was founded to care for injured wildlife and, if possible, return the critters to their natural habitat. The center was started in 1979 by a veterinarian, Dr. Rory Foster.
Rory Foster was a veterinarian, and he had a veterinarian clinic right next to where this building is. He kept getting wild animals in, so he recognized that there was a need for that.
Foster died in 1987.
There's still some veterinarians that get wild animals. They end up calling us now. So Rory decided to start this place and start actually caring for the wild animals.
Mark Naniot is the center's wildlife rehabilitator.
That one was hit by a car and was brought in just a couple of weeks ago. Didn't have any major injuries, just some bruising, a little bit of swelling on one foot. So his recovery was pretty short here. He was only here for about 2.5 weeks. So that was a nice, easy one. What he's going to do is just kind of sit and get his bearings now for a little while and decide where he wants to be, whether he's got a family someplace that he wants to get back to.
Much of the meat and fish fed to the birds is donated by sportsmen and women. When people come to the center, they mainly see birds. Some animals are not on display to the public because rehabilitationists don't want them to get too used to being around humans. That's because they'll soon be released back into the wild. There are bears. They were brought in by volunteers after they are found by the public or by DNR wardens. But animal rehabilitationist Mark Naniot says some of the deer and birds are brought in unnecessarily.
Especially, in our area where we have a large tourist base in this particular area. People come up for the beauty of the lakes and the natural areas, but they might be from the cities, so they don't realize that, for example, fawns are left alone for a large part of the time when they're very young by their mothers.
Some of those fawns that you got out there
are probably kidnapped victims, yes.
Wildlife belongs to the state, and the Department of Natural Resources forbids people from holding it captive. In 2004, administrative rules allowed places such as the Northwoods Wildlife Center to obtain licenses.
What we're trying to do is make it more of a profession, get people out there that are better trained, understand what they need to do with animals, be more aware of diseases, educate the public, and do what's right for the animal.
The Northwoods Wildlife Center is a nonprofit organization and takes donations for tours. Much of its money comes from people who sponsor the animals. It's the work of animal rehabilitation centers, in part, that have brought back the American bald eagle from the edge of extinction. Now the eagle is soaring to new heights. In 1970, Wisconsin's bald eagle population numbered only 82 pairs. Today, there are more than 1,000. And one of the best places to view them is in Sauk County. Bald eagles are no longer listed as an endangered species, but remain a protected bird. This next creature is attracting a lot of attention, including millions of hits on the internet. They're known as the ghosts of the forest. We leave you with In Wisconsin reporter Joe Garrett's search for the elusive white deer herd near Boulder Junction.
Visually, they're so unusual and so startling. It looks like a ghost at times, just kind of drifting through the woods.
Jeff Richter is a nature photographer based in Mercer. Some 10 years ago, Richter took his camera and went to track down a mystery. Local stories of a band of white deer near Boulder Junction. He saw a flash of white.
And so I stopped and got out of the car and had my cameras with me, so I kind of eased over there, and all of a sudden the deer popped its head up, and I looked eye to eye with this white deer and was just instantly hooked by him.
So began a decade-long quest that's resulted in Richter's recent book, White Deer.
Our headlights flash onto a white doe standing right by the road. And of course, we were going slow anyway, but the brakes are on and that intake of breath and, oh my God, white deer.
John Bates of Manitowish is a well-known Northwoods naturalist and the author of the text of Richter's book. It was his job to research the science and the history of these deer in Wisconsin. He discovered that they seem to have been here for ages. They are the subject of Native American legends, and they're mentioned in the journals of European explorers.
There's a pocket here in Manitowish Waters area, another in the Boulder Junction area, another in the Land O'Lakes area. And really there's individuals then seen all around the state, but there seems to be an unusual concentration of them here in north central Wisconsin. Why, I have absolutely no idea.
Why the white deer came to flourish in these places, no one knows. But there are at least two reasons why they're thriving now.
Local people protect these deer and feed these deer. And we have laws now that prevent people, at least cost you dearly. If you wish to shoot one in Wisconsin, you'll pay.
They're protected by state law and cherished by the local communities. And yes, they really are albino. Pink eyes are not required, according to Bates' research.
I'd always been told that albino deer had to have pink eyes. So I eventually contacted a professor of genetic studies at the University of Minnesota who tried his best to educate me. And the bottom line is he said that there are many forms of albinism and that pink eyes are a strong likelihood but not a necessity.
So what will you see in Wisconsin's white deer?
They'll have pink ears. Their noses will be pink, and the eye of an albino deer will be either pink or this light blue or light gray. Their eyes almost look like eyes of a goat. Very, very different looking. So you'd have this brilliant white animal, but with these pink characteristics, ears, nose, and hooves.
So how many of these white deer do we have in Wisconsin?
Well, if we ran the numbers, we have 1.5 million more or less deer. And if we have a 1 in 20,000 chance of having albinos, 20,000 into 1.5 million, where's my calculator? I don't know, but it's not a very big number.
But that rough number, that roll of the genetic dice, doesn't say how many animals will actually survive. Bates, the naturalist, speculates.
And certainly in the summer they are going to be far more obvious to a natural predator, but in the winter which is 5 months out of the year up here, that we would have snow cover, they would have the advantage. So 5 months versus 7 months, maybe it's a trade-off.
You can see that roll of the genetic dice played out in individual families.
I've seen albino does with both brown and white fawns, and I've seen brown does with both albino and brown fawns as well. So they can have both. And they seem to, not be ostracized from the other deer. At times they seem to be the dominant animal, and at other times they seem to be a more submissive animal. So they just seem to be regular deer as far as the deer were concerned.
Regular in behavior, remarkable in appearance.
We actually have had a couple of stores where clerks overheard people had picked up the book and were looking at it and said, boy, this is really neat, if only they were real.
Oh, they're real, all right.
They just at times look kind of funny out there, honestly, particularly like summertime where they're sort of sneaking around in the woods, and cripe, you can see them 100 yards away. They stick out like a sore thumb, and they're doing their usual kind of deer sneaking, and it's kind of, you chuckle to yourself. But there is something just a little different about them and special about them.
Major funding for In Wisconsin is provided by the people of Alliant Energy, who bring safe, reliable, and environmentally friendly energy to keep homes, neighborhoods, and life in Wisconsin running smoothly. Alliant Energy, we're on for you. And the animal dentistry and oral surgery specialists of Milwaukee and Oshkosh, a veterinary team working with pet owners and family veterinarians throughout Wisconsin, providing care for oral disease and dental problems of small companion animals, with additional funding provided by Bike Wisconsin.